One of the tasks that you and I are charged with is to lead with strategic planning. We're going to explore this just for a few moments, strategic planning. I brought with me a can of Coca-Cola. I don't know if you know the history of Coca-Cola, but back in 1886, a pharmacist, Dr. John Pemberton, he threw some ingredients into a kettle in his backyard, brought it to a boil over a fire. After it cooled, he tasted it, and shazam, he had sarsaparilla, which later became known as Coca-Cola. That happened in Atlanta, Georgia, 1886. Atlanta, Georgia is the corporate world headquarters of Coca-Cola. Now, 100 years later, 1986, Coca-Cola said that in 100 years, 97% of the world has heard of our product. And in 100 years, 51% of the world has tasted of our product. 51%. Just in 100 years. I believe that they were able to accomplish that because of strategic planning. Back in the era of the Second World War, there was a guy by the name of Robert Woodruff serving as the president of Coke. And that guy, it was his goal to put a bottle of Coca-Cola in the hands of anyone in the military, U.S. military, anywhere in the world for 15 cents. Well, guess what? Robert Woodruff got it done. It was accomplished through strategic planning. Under his leadership of many years, of decades actually, he built the company into what was a $4 billion company, which was unheard of. Well, he took under wing a young guy, an engineer there, by the name of Roberto Goizeta. Goizeta only served for 16 years, short years, because his life was claimed with an early battle with cancer. But while Roberto Goizeta was there, he did so much strategic planning, and then he implemented that plan that the company went from a $4 billion company to over a $150 billion company. Incredible. In just 16 short years. As a matter of fact, not long before Goizeta passed away, he made this comment. He said, 1 billion hours ago, human life appeared on earth. 1 billion minutes ago, Christianity emerged. 1 billion seconds ago, the Beatles appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. And 1 billion Coca-Colas ago was yesterday. Incredible. It's the fruit brought about by strategic planning. I believe that strategic planning is scriptural. In Matthew chapter 28, Jesus, in the Great Commission, he says, all authority, verse 18, in heaven, on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. How are we to do that? Baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey all that I have commanded you. Surely I will be with you all to the very end of the age. There's a strategic plan. You reach them, and then you teach them. We read over in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, Jesus said that you will receive the power of the Holy Spirit, and then you will be my witnesses. You'll be my witnesses right there in Jerusalem, then in Judea, then in Samaria, then to the ends of the earth. It's a strategic plan. We read in Numbers chapter 13 of how Moses sent the spies into the promised land. Check it out. What's the topography like? The agriculture, the people, sociologically, you check it out. And then he developed a plan for taking the land. It was delayed by 40 years, but nevertheless, there was a plan, a strategic plan. We read in Nehemiah chapter 2. Nehemiah, the cupbearer to the king, he arrives in Jerusalem, and he, under the cover of darkness, with a few good men and his mount, his horse, he goes out and he looks at the debris field of the wall that had been destroyed when the Babylonians came and laid siege to the city. Nehemiah is thinking strategically, how will I build this wall as quickly and as effectively as possible? Strategic planning. We read in Philippians chapter 3, the Apostle Paul making a powerful statement beginning in verse 13. This one thing I do, Forgetting what is behind and straining what is ahead, for what is ahead, I press on. Paul had a plan. He wasn't living in the past. He wasn't anchored in the past. No, he was pressing on to the tomorrows of life. Strategic planning. 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 32. The sons of Issachar were men who had minds to understand the times, and they knew what Israel should do. 200 chiefs with their families under their command. Those guys had a discerning mind. They were able to read the culture and then say to the king, King David, this is what we need to do to respond appropriately. That's strategic thinking. We, as elders, need to have minds to understand the times. We read our culture, and then we know how to respond appropriately. We must think strategically, which produces a strategic plan. And why? Why would we want to develop a 3-year strategic plan? Simply put, our culture morphs every 3 to 5 years, as George Barna has told us. Church sociologist George Barna, our culture is constantly evolving every 3 to 5 years. We need a strategic plan. After all, failing to plan is planning to fail. Without vision, the people perish. We read in Proverbs. We must have a plan. We need to understand this as well. Why I think 3 years is an ideal time frame for a strategic plan. Think with me for a moment. Jesus finished his work in 3 years, and then he returned to heaven. Before he died on a cross, Jesus said to his Father in heaven, Father, I have brought you glory by completing the work you sent me to do. That means in 3.5 years, Jesus got everything accomplished that mattered to God. Now, what if you and I, for whatever reason, we were gone in 3.5 years? What would we have to do in terms of leadership in order to make the church stronger without us than with us? I believe we have to turn up the heat on the burner of our leadership. And one way to do that is through strategic planning. Now, let me just share with you a few common myths with regard to strategic planning. Here's one. People will say strategic planning is only for large churches. Well, that's a myth, because that's how smaller churches become larger. Strategic planning helps to grow a church. Here's another myth. Strategic planning will split the church. Again, that's a myth. A strategic plan brings people together. It draws them together for a common journey, a common cause, a common target. A third myth of strategic planning. Strategic planning is a function of only the leaders. I don't believe so. I believe that there are many voices that bring much to this conversation throughout a church family. There are people in the church who have been there for years, who have invested their lives in that local church. They love that local church. They give to that local church. They serve in that local church. They pray for that local church. And I believe that God can counsel us through them. Many advisors make victory sure, it says in Proverbs. So it's not just a function of leaders. There are many valuable insights to draw from those who are within the family of God. And here's a final myth when it comes to strategic planning. Strategic planning should be hired out to professional consultants. I don't believe that at all. See, that consultant, when they come in, they don't know the history of the organization. They do not know the pulse of the people. Oh, they can spend time interviewing, asking questions, but then they go off to their ivory tower where they put together a plan. It's not owned by the people then. Strategic planning is something that you, the elder team, should be doing. Now, the first time around, you could have a coach come in and help you with that process. But then from that time on, you can do it on your own. I was on the phone just yesterday with a senior minister in Delaware. And Mark was sharing with me the joy, the excitement that their church now is on their third strategic 3-year plan. I went out some years ago and help facilitate that process for the first time, but then that elder team and staff, they knew how to do it on their own. And here's the excitement. Not only have they done 2 more strategic plans for a total of 3, but their church family, they are teaching other churches to develop a strategic plan. And other churches are learning the value of strategic planning and the fruit that it can bear. You see, there are some direct benefits of strategic planning. Let me just give you a few. Here's why you and I would want to do a strategic plan. Not just come up with the plan, but then execute that plan. First of all, strategic planning provides a sense of direction and purpose. Many times people might feel as if that there is ambiguity in the local church. We just exist from week to week. No, a strategic plan, it draws people together, providing for them a sense of direction. Here's where we're headed, and here's our purpose. That's the road, that's the path on which we are traveling, and there is our desired destination. That is a benefit of strategic planning. Here's another. Strategic planning helps in the wise use of resources. I can't speak for you, but the church where I serve as the senior minister, the lead servant, as one of the elders, the church where I serve, we do not have a bottomless checking account. We do not have unlimited volunteers. There is a limited amount of resources, and a strategic plan helps identify where it is that we invest those resources, how it is that we will expend those resources. It helps you and me to become better stewards. Here's another benefit of strategic planning. It is evangelistic. Strategic planning is evangelistic. Listen carefully. People today are very possessive of their time. Time is one of the most valuable, non-renewable commodities in the American mind. People are possessive of their time. The soccer for the kids, this school function and that. We are not going to always be able to attract people evangelistically. They're going to see a church many times as just existing, as I said a moment ago, week to week. But when you and I have a strategic plan and we are excited about where we are going, a person will want more than likely to be a part of that community of people because they have direction, they have purpose, and that direction and purpose is exciting and dynamic and so very meaningful. There's a meaning beyond this realm behind that plan. A strategic plan can be evangelistic, drawing people to that local church. And finally, strategic planning, it reduces the trauma caused by changes in leadership. Now think with me for a moment. Billy Graham, a beloved man of God, who started the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. One could think that that association is going to no longer exist when the good Billy Graham, good doctor, passes from this life into the next, but that's not the case. Because the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, they have a strategic plan. And they are all about executing that plan. It helps in the continuity of leadership, in that organization's continued existence. There are benefits for a strategic plan. Now let's just talk for a moment about how do you develop a plan? How do you get it done? There are a number of models, templates, that you could use. E2, we use a process by which we ask open-ended questions of about 12 to 18 people in the room. We want some of the elders or all of the elders. We want some of the staff or all of the staff, depending on the size of the church. But then as well, some very key vested volunteers who love and know that church. And then using a series of open-ended questions, you as a leadership team, you come to a place where you identify 2 or 3 key targets for the next 3 years. And then again, we ask some more questions that help develop specific goals and objectives within each of those targets, so that when all is said and done, at the end of about a 12-hour process, you have in your hands the nucleus of a 3-year plan. I've done this so many times with so many churches, and it has brought revival to that local body of Christ. It is a process that can be done with your team, and then you are able, time and again, to execute the next 3-year plan. The key is you don't just write it up and then put it on a shelf. No, you've got a plan. You've got a roadmap for 3 years. Then you have to execute that plan. Being willing to do 3 things. They're all M's. Modify the plan. It's not set in concrete, etched in stone. Modify the plan. Something might happen, like a 9/11. And you take a detour on that journey, but you eventually get back to that desired destination 3 years. You have to mention that plan over and over again. I help you brand that plan. Give it a name. And that becomes common nomenclature within the church family. As soon as they hear that name of the plan, they know immediately, hey, that's our 3-year plan. So you got to keep mentioning it. Now, here's a very important issue. You got to monitor the plan. Modify it if necessary. Mention it again and again. And you monitor it to see if you're making progress on that road to your preferred future destination 3 years from now. That, my friend, is the benefit of strategic planning. And guess what? It is the work of the elder team. And when you and I use a strategic plan, prompted and provided by the moving of the Holy Spirit, I'm here to tell you, in that moment, you will lead well.